Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 14 of the FV014 podcast. I'm your host, Sunny Burns.
And I'm your co-host, Sunmarie Burns.
Today, we're bringing you a special guest. He's going to be talking to us all about kind of time optimization and pursuing your dreams and kind of the steps he's taken to get there and how he keeps himself motivated, the habits and lifestyle he leads in order to really excel and really maximize every single moment he has to pursue his dreams. And, he's 32 years old, is married, has a daughter, 4 months old, and we just kind of dig in real deep with how he's, he's working a full-time job, but running like 3 different businesses at the same time and has 15 properties. But yeah, we really dig in deep with him on how he's able to do it all. And it's very interesting. He wakes up at, 3:15 every morning or 3:30 every morning. And, he's just 100% committed and intentional about the life he leads.
One of the things I loved most about this talk was how he talked about mindfulness and crafting your thoughts to shape your day, and just how the power is in your attitudes and how you approach life, not so much what happens to you, and that you're in control of how you're going to react to things. And I thought that that was a great point he made, just taking responsibility for your own thoughts to really live a positive, happy outlook and live a life that you are grateful for.
Right. And we share a little bit about financial independence and the power and confidence it can give you in your workplace. So even before you retire early, or even if that's not your dream, how financial independence still is such a key contributor to happiness and success in your main 9-to-5 job.
Right. And digging in a little bit too about, if you don't have a dream, how to find a dream so that you have a reason to get up excited in the morning.
Right. So I think we'll all enjoy this episode. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks for everyone who's been reviewing us on iTunes. We're definitely getting up there. And again, just thanks again. Hope you guys enjoy the episode. Let's get started.
You're listening to the FV014 podcast. If you're looking to raise your family with intention, gain financial independence, and live a life of true freedom, you're in the right place. Join us as we explore together how to create thriving families, because strong families are the cornerstone for a world at peace.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the FV014 podcast. Today, we have a very special guest. He actually came to one of our meetups that we host locally here in the Clifton, New Jersey, northern New Jersey area. He gave us a great talk and wanted to invite him on the show to talk a little bit about real estate investing, but mostly I loved how he kind of shared about how he optimizes all his time and his scheduling and just kind of really optimizing his life to pursue his dreams and live the life that he wants. So I'm so glad and excited to introduce to us all here today James Masotti. And just to give you a little bit of background on him, he lives here in the, not northern New Jersey area, but in Washington Township, New Jersey. And he has an 8-month-old daughter. And he's still working full-time as a supply chain manager. We'll let him explain what that means in a little bit. But he also has started since 2010 buying his first property, turning that into a rental, and has now 15 units in his portfolio. Not in New Jersey, but in Wilmington, Delaware. So we'll dive a little bit into there. But let's welcome James Masotti. James, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me. Look forward to spending the next couple of hours talking with you guys.
So what is a supply chain manager?
It's the greatest job in the world. So it's like, the easiest way to explain kind of a supply chain manager is just really good videos that were put together by Arizona State University, which is a really big supply chain program. So if you want to Google Arizona State University supply chain, you'll see their YouTube videos. They do the best job of explaining it. But basically, as a supply chain, it's about how everything gets everywhere. So if you bought something in a store, if you are, basically everything, right? I mean, think about the process that takes to get your house built, right? So all the logistics involved, there's all that planning, things like even in restaurants and hotels, right? It's the actual process of designing, how things work. A real fascinating facet of supply chain is like hospitals. So like people actually plan like, okay, in like the different closets and like different hospital wards, right? You need different supplies. And so depending on what you actually service, so that what's closest to the nurses so that they can get to patients in the fastest possible way without running out of supplies. So all of that stuff is supply chain. So that's the quick and fun version of supply chain.
Very fun. Very fun.
Well, it's things you don't really think about, you know?
No, yeah,
I
yeah.
think I take everything for granted that probably there's a lot of thought put into it.
So many people have no idea how, again, like literally everything comes down to all the crazy logistics involved with, you know, whether it's something simple or as complex as like trying to build an airplane and stuff like that. So
Right.
You're the behind the scenes magic guy.
Yeah, it's a thankless job. You know, so few people are like, oh, hey, thanks for getting me my stuff on time. You know, nobody ever says that. It's always like, hey, this was late. What's wrong with you? And it's like, well, what about the 9,000 other times I got it to you on time? Yeah, that doesn't matter.
The supply chain must be terrible with Amazon.
It's a very thankless job.
Yeah, you used to work for Amazon too, right?
I did used to work for Amazon, yes.
Yeah. So, okay, on the surface, you know, you're a 32-year-old guy, you're married, you have a daughter, so kind of you're working a full-time job, so very kind of on the surface like an average American citizen. How would you say your life is different than that average person, that average American?
You know, like the average American spends, you know, hours on their phone, hours watching TV, hours commuting, you know, sitting on the couch. And again, that's the average, right? And I'm going to guess that anybody listening to your podcast or watching this is probably not one of those average people, or maybe they are right now and they don't want to be, right? And so I think one of the biggest things is really kind of that intentionality of making a decision of what it is that you actually like. What do you want to get out of your life, right? Like we're all only here for an unknown number of days, years, minutes. You know, we never know what's coming. And so it's kind of, you know, do you want to just be here, or do you want to actually do something? And so, you know, when I was younger, I was always in that do something camp. So like even as far back as in high school, there's a community service organization called Kiwanis, and they have what they call Sponsored Youth, which is Key Club. And I started out like as an officer in my local school, coordinating, you know, community service events. By the time I was a senior, I was the governor for the state of Pennsylvania, leading hundreds of schools and 15,000 students right across the state in community service, leadership, and guidance. So like I was always about making that positive action. Mm-hmm. And while I definitely felt like it maybe took a step back and kind of, you know, call it my college years and slightly after college, there was that eventually like that kind of like aha moment where I was like, what am I doing with my life? Right. And kind of just wanting to, you know, figure out like, okay, like how do I get more? How do I do something else? And, you know, I would still say like I'm trying to figure out what that is. But it's one of those like, you know, everybody's got the same 24 hours in the day, and it's just trying to figure out how to use them. So.
Right. And I'm curious, you know, having that drive, having that longing to do something with your life, to make an impact, to do more. How did that land in, because you bought a piece of property pretty early on, I think while you were in college, you had mentioned. How did that translate to that?
Yeah, it was pretty close. So, so basically I actually ended up getting a job before I graduated. And so the company I was working for moved me over to Germany, and I was negotiating buying a house right at that same time. So yeah, I was probably 20 or 21 years old. And it was just doing the math of, again, I bought the house. It was, again, in Wilmington, Delaware for $77,000. So I'm like doing the math. I'm like, okay, Delaware's got really cheap property taxes. I think my taxes on that place were like $1,500 a year or something like that. So compared to New Jersey, you guys know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You know, taxes. So I was like, all in, like my mortgage payment was like $600. And it's, you know, 1,200 square foot, 2-bed, 1.5 bath house. And I was like, I couldn't get an apartment for like less than like $900, $1,000. So I was like, wait, I can buy my own house for less than rent? I was like, that's insane. And there was this awesome program that allowed me to do a 0 down payment. So I was like, wait, no money out of my pocket and I get a house? Like, you crazy? And so, I mean, it was 2008, so people were still kind of crazy about mortgages. So,
but how? Okay, so like I feel like most people in your situation, you know, kind of almost ready to graduate. So many of our friends, you know, that I talk to, especially these days, are like they're at 6 figures in debt. You know, what was your kind of finance situation? How were you? Even if you had to put 0% down, how were you prepared to do that?
Yeah, I don't know. I was just too stupid to know better, maybe. Yeah, I mean, I didn't have 6 figures in debt, but I mean, you know, I definitely came out of school. I mean, I went to state school in Pennsylvania, you know, financed the whole way through. So it was only about, you know, $12,000 a year. But yeah, I mean, came out, you know, $40,000 in debt. because I also studied abroad in Japan while I was in college. So like I financed that trip as well. And yeah, so I mean, like, it was like, okay, well, I've got this loan payment, a couple $100 a month, and everything else. And, it was really just, there's a lot. I encourage as many people as possible, especially in our generation where everybody is coming out with that kind of debt, if at all possible, live at home with your parents as much as you can. And my parents are great, except I could never live with them. So like I moved out of the house when I moved away to Germany at 17 years old, and kind of came home for like 6 months and was like, nope, that's it. Need to get out. So that's when I started looking for something.
You got used to living on your own.
Right. Yeah, that's what we did. We got married, and even still, we lived 2 years at my parents' house in a little bedroom, but we were able to save $75,000 that way. She was making $50K, I was making $50K, only $100K, but in 2 years we saved up $75K, which was enough for us to kind of get started with growing our portfolio and creating our freedom.
Some people didn't know why we did it, but it really was for just the savings factor. And
absolutely, it's so huge because again, I have so many friends that again, one went to grad school, right, and then was able to, again, 2 years stay at home after that, at working, pay off all of her debt, so that again, getting started, they didn't have that big barrier. Another investor friend from down here, they actually were kind of doing the Burr house hack kind of a thing, and they had an opportunity to kind of move back in with their in-laws, do some stuff, maximize their rental income for a little while, so that, and now they're going and they're buying another rental property, right? So like they're in that spot where they're kind of like renting sort of, but buying more properties, right? And it's like there's sacrifices, and it's one of those things that's like, if you want to be keeping up with the Joneses, right, and you want to feel like you're doing all this different kind of stuff, that's part of what'll set you behind, right? So it's kind of when you start out in school, you were used to eating ramen all the time and whatever, and as close as you can live to how you lived in college, as long as that was more than likely relatively frugal, you can keep doing that, getting roommates, living with your parents, whatever it is that you can do to cut back on your expenses. It's such a huge benefit. So I didn't get roommates. I did kind of have all that stuff. So I would say like, I bought the house and it was definitely a cheaper option than rent. But, I mean, I'm here, 10, 11, 12 years later. I mean, I'm still trying to pay off my student loans. It's not there yet. But I was also fortunate that it was a weird thing. I actually took out private loans, and my dad co-signed on them, and his credit score was so good that like at one point my interest rate was at like 1% on my student loans. So I was like in no hurry to pay them back, because I was like free money when I could be otherwise investing in real estate, making better returns than that. So
right. So you were in Germany when you bought that first house at 21 years old. You bought for $77,000, and you said it was about like $600 all in payment a month. So you rented it out almost immediately? Were you cash flowing, breaking even? What did that look like?
Yep. So once I started renting that, so my company relocated me to California. So that's when I started renting it in 2010. And I think we started charging $850 a month on that. So not want to call great rent ratios. I mean, like the stuff that I buy now, I'm probably in that same price point, but I'm usually charging more like $1,100, $1,200 a month rent. So definitely a little better on the cash flow side, but it was my primary residence, right? So it was never bought with the intention of being a rental, and things like that. So, I mean, it's been largely break even, for me, I would say, definitely positive when you take into things like, the depreciation and tax benefits and stuff like that, but just on a pure cash flow basis. I kind of call it just an extra savings account, basically.
Yeah, after 30 years, you have a fully paid off house, and I'm sure it's not going to be worth $77,000 in 30 years. It'll probably be,
It'll be worth at least 78. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wilmington, Delaware is not the best appreciation market, so.
Right. But still, and you won't have to pay any of that down payment or any of that mortgage yourself. The tenants are paying it, and you'll have a nice little nest egg and all the other ones that you bought along the way.
That's the goal.
So going back to what you were mentioning earlier, which we're both intrigued by, is your go-getter personality and your time management. And I'm curious to know, what was it like growing up? How much did your family and school teach you about time management and self-motivation? Or was that truly just you, your personality? How did you learn to become so motivated?
Right. The one thing to mention too is like during when you talked at our meetup, you had mentioned the average person spends 5.5 hours on their phone, or maybe, and then also maybe like it was like 5 hours a day at watching TV, which I think that's the average. I know people who spend a lot more than that. I know people who spend a lot less. So maybe that's a good segue for you as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Like, I can't necessarily say where it came from. I've kind of always been crazy. Again, I'm fortunate that one of the things I did inherit from my dad, I guess, is the need to not sleep. Um, so, I was that weird kid in high school that I would have the high school trainer open up the gym, like the weight room at like 6:30 in the morning. So like, I mean, like what high school kids are like trying to wake up, and get to school early, right?
Right.
Well, that was me because I was trying to get into the weight room, before all the wrestlers and football team and stuff like that got in there and kicked me off all the weights. So,
Smart.
yeah, so where that drive necessarily came from, right? I mean, I think I was just always interested in like lots of stuff, right? And so like it was like, okay, like I had, academics, I had athletics, I had these club activities that I was involved in, and like had to find time to do it all. And I was, again, fortunate I didn't need a lot of sleep. So I was wake up early, it was stay late. And, I always enjoyed, the level of engagement, the people that I was around with, the impact I was making, whether it was, teammates or people that I was doing community service with and for. And like it's not that my parents weren't really ever involved in any of that kind of stuff, but they also were very much so like, they never said no or stop or anything like that. Like the crazier I got and the more things I wanted to sign up for, they were just like, okay, like if you think you can handle it, like your grades can't fall, and that was always, the number one rule. As long as I could keep my grades up, it was okay. And so, like I said, I mean, that was kind of how I got that start, and definitely kind of fell away from it, like as I was going through school, because in college I just worked full time and went to school full time. So I was working,
Wow.
40 hours a week, managing a pizza shop, and taking 18 credits a semester, and then doing a full 12 to 15 credits in the summertime as well. So, like I
Wow.
said, I mean, like I had no time for anything else other than work in school. And then when I kind of got done with that, like I'd lost that a little bit. And it definitely took me a couple of years of like, kind of getting back into a groove, trying to figure out, what did I want to be and what do I want to do and what was my life turning into. So I definitely didn't have like this continuous stream of where I always had it. I definitely lost it along the way. But it was when I was one of those like, points where I was like kind of like realizing like, like again, like I don't know what necessarily dawned on it, but it was like, what am I doing with my life and like what's changed and like why don't I feel complete anymore? And when I kind of looked at it, I was like, well, I'm not doing these things. And so it just kind of slowly started figuring out, okay, like what could that start to look like? What could that start to be? So like I became a big brother with Big Brothers Big Sisters. I got back involved with Kiwanis, started doing more athletic stuff as far as, running and riding my bike again. And just trying to find, ways to kind of figure out what my path was going to be. And then along the way, then I kind of found real estate. And so let's say it's been a reinventing process for me to try to figure out like, okay, as an adult, like how do I start to get some of those same things I had as a kid? Because, when you're in high school, it's like handed to you on a silver platter, right? You got all these clubs, you got all these activities, when you're an adult, it's like, okay, like nobody cares what you're doing. So it's
Right.
like it's like there's not as many like clubs or activities. Again, Facebook's kind of great now because you can start and meetup.com and all these things, so you can start to find groups that, of people who have similar interests in you, like board games, all that other kind of stuff. But it's really taking like, time to try to figure out like what's that going to look like. So.
Right. So I feel like you kind of said that, right after graduating college, you kind of went into the regular grind of things and you kind of lost your way a little bit. I don't want to say that, but a little bit that way.
Yeah.
What were you kind of replacing all of those really like proactive activities with? Like what made up your day?
Yeah, I mean, my day really was just work and school, right?
Okay.
And so it definitely wasn't, frugal back then. I was probably how old? I must have been like 19, like a junior in college. I bought a brand new car. So I'm like my car payment was as much as my rent payment. At one point, as much as I'm a huge audiophile, like before I bought that car, I had an $800 car and a $3,000 stereo.
Oh,
So
wow.
it's like, that was obviously a great financial investment to make, right? So I would say like I very much so kind of got into this concept of like, like buying my happiness, right? So like I was like, oh, I'm working so hard, I'm making this money, instead of being smart and, saving it and investing it, which is crazy because I almost bought a house when I was actually in college. So like my roommates had moved out and I actually had, just enough money because it was like I fell into that like low income bracket, so like I could qualify for some like down payment assistance programs.
Right,
and I actually
right.
remember in college, looking around campus at some properties again, that were in that similar kind of, $70,000-$80,000 price point, and being like, oh, well, maybe I could buy something. Well, instead of that, I went and bought a new car, so like I want to say like it was there on the periphery, but I was just trying to, I was trying to tell myself like, oh, you work hard, you deserve these things, spend the money, buy the TV, buy the PlayStation, buy the car, and you'll get a good job when you come out. And of course I graduated in 2008. Which was not a great time to be looking for a job. I was fortunate I did get a good one. But now I'm sitting there and it's like there's all this financial uncertainty, and I'm like, I've got no money saved up. I've got all this debt, and I'm just like, what in the world was I doing?
Right.
So yeah, definitely took a little while to really start to rethink things.
Right.
It's so easy to fall into that kind of mindset, though. You're fresh out of college, you have money in your pocket, and you don't maybe have your plans for the future ironed out. You don't have your 5-year goal and your 10-year goal. So I think it's very easy to start living in the moment then, and that's when sometimes your pocket has a hole in it.
Yeah, and I think we all can understand too, right? I mean, like, you guys started your meetup, you started this podcast, right? Why? Because one, you have a desire to share things, but two, you want to be around people that are like you. And, the way that I want to call we collectively, and that's anybody in the real estate investors, the FIRE movement, any of this different kind of stuff, right? Like, we think differently than that average person does, right? That average person who goes to work for their 9 to 5 and, they kind of expect to get things back from life rather than how much they can give to life, right? And so, when you're going to college and you're going to work, and the majority of the people in your classes and your coworkers, that's what they do. And they tell you like, oh, you got a good job, go do this, or you're doing that. Like, it's very easy to be caught up with that's just what's normal and that's what people do.
Right.
And so it wasn't until I, was getting just a little bit ahead that I was like, why is this what people do? Like, I finally got to that point where like I was asking myself, this doesn't make sense to me, right? Like, there's got to be something different. And like, I hadn't necessarily found FIRE podcasts weren't quite a thing back then and stuff like that yet, but it was definitely one of those like, all right, I need to start thinking differently about, how I do things, right? And it started out with like little stuff like, I wasn't going to go and buy clothes for work, brand new anymore, right? Like, I started buying my work clothes at the thrift store because all of a sudden I realized, I was like, wait, the same clothes that like were costing me $50 for a pair of pants, I can get at the thrift store for $5. And it's like, name brand designer stuff. I was like, there's no holes in it. Like, this is crazy, right?
Yeah.
So, little things like that, is kind of how I kind of got started. And it was a little bit out of necessity because, again, as much as I was making good money, newly married, bought a house, still had lots of bills. And it was like, okay, well, if I'm going to save any money, if I'm going to invest any money, I got to control my expenses, and again, I didn't know about FIRE. I didn't know about things like you need a budget, didn't really use, I just kind of started being like, okay, like, I gotta start spending less in order to make sure I can start making the progress that I want to make.
Right. Can you explain real quick, because I don't think we ever explained, what is FIRE on this podcast?
Okay, yeah. So financial independence, retire early is kind of the FIRE movement. But I don't necessarily know that I'll ever do the retire early thing in the conventional sense. But the financial independence, that concept of not being dependent on a W-2 paycheck, right? So having some form of passive residual income or self-sustaining income that allows you to not be dependent on a paycheck. So again, for me, will I ever get to a point where I don't want to work anymore? I really do enjoy a lot of what I do. I am also very entrepreneurial and I've started a company. And so kind of trying to grow that. And, there's a lot of fun and enjoyment that comes with trying to build a company and grow it. So it's like, do I want to sit on a beach and just kind of hang out all the time? Like, there's a part of that sounds cool. But there's the other part of me who, is so used to being active all the time that I'd be like, I could do that for 5 minutes and I'd be bored. Right. So,
right. And when we say retire early, it's like retiring at like 35 years old. A lot of people, when they start the workforce, they're like, oh, I'm going to be here till 59 and a half anyway. I'm going to be getting this, 50K, 100K paycheck. Well, why not buy a car? Why not enjoy myself? I'm getting this anyway. There's no, but, when you say, once you discover FIRE or this dream of potentially retiring early or living life on your own terms, financially independent, then you have that dream, and that goal is not, oh, let me get the fanciest car, let me get the nicest life, or upgrade my life continually. It's, let me get the freedom as fast as I can, let me buy that freedom as quickly as I can, and everything kind of becomes secondary at that point. And it's not, those materialistic possessions are not as important as you realize that time is your greatest asset. I think you'd agree, James, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And because time is the one thing that you can never get back, right? Like nobody has figured out time travel yet, as far as I'm aware. They haven't shared it with me. So if any of your listeners have time travel, let me know.
Let us know, guys.
But otherwise, like until we get that Hermione Granger, time Turner necklace thing, we're just, we're stuck with the time that we've got, right? And plenty of people that have money, they lose money, they get money back again, right? Like, so money can be recycled. You can lose it, you can gain it, but with time, like, you don't have that luxury. And so, the more that you can make the best out of it, then that's really what there is. And so that's really, again, I came in and talked to the meetup about and stuff like that was, again, we've all got that 24 hours. So like, how do you make the best of that 24 hours to prioritize and do the things that you want to do and are important to you?
Right. And okay, go ahead. Sorry.
So on that note, speaking about time, we'd love to delve into how you spend your time. What does your typical day look like? I know that you're very organized in how you sequence your time and your schedule. It's very deliberate. And I think a lot of value could be gained if other people saw that example. So would you like to share with us
Sure.
your time strategies?
Yeah, so I would say, again, this is one of those areas where I'm still growing and evolving. And just, what I know about myself is like I need that constant structure and reminder of, making sure I'm staying on top of things, because again, I can fall back into the trap, right? Like I know if I leave my time to be unstructured and uncommitted, that I will sit there and spend too much time on Facebook, and having that accountability is important for me. So my alarm goes off. First alarm goes off at 3:30 in the morning. I do have a second alarm for 3:45 on the days I'm feeling lazy. And
okay, what time did you wake up today? Let's test you here.
Well, so here's the interesting thing. So as you don't actually know this yet, but I had my training run for the marathon this weekend. Did a little over 12 miles.
Oh, nice.
And woke up Monday morning to do my next run, and I had a pain on the underside of my foot. And the last time I was training, I had gotten plantar fasciitis, which is a strain of the ligament on the underside of the foot. And I'm concerned that I may have done that again. And so until I can go to the podiatrist, I'm not doing that. So I did take advantage of the fact that I didn't run this morning, and I slept until 4:15.
Okay.
So
sleeping in 4:15.
I did. I slept until 4:15.
Well, that's awesome. 12-mile run. So for anyone that doesn't know, me and James and another friend, or maybe two friends who are real estate investors, dads who have want to keep fitness, are running a marathon in September, the Via Marathon. So we're all training for that. James is partially.
So I may not make it now because my podiatrist appointment's not for like 2 more weeks. So I don't want to. I'm going to try and get on the bike and ride so I can try and keep my cardio up. But if I don't get a clean bill of health and quickly get back on in the saddle, I might still come and cheer you guys on, but I don't know if I'll be able to run it.
Okay. So we're at 3:45. You're waking up from your or 3:30, your first alarm. Okay, what's going on next?
Yep. So then I'm going out. I'm getting my exercise. So again, that's right now. That's running bright and early in the morning. Well, not so bright. It's kind of dark out actually when I'm running. Doing that, and then coming home, getting ready to go to work, and then usually leaving to go into work somewhere between 5 and 5:30, and then getting to work early. So one of the big things for me is I probably getting into work early. I get as productive during the first 2 hours of my day, 3 hours of my day as I am the whole rest of the day. Nobody's calling me, nobody's emailing me. I can actually work on projects, things like that. Because once the day starts up, you get into meetings, things start happening. And then pretty consistently, I'm rolling out at 4:00. So again, unless there's something that really needs to, I've got to get my times blocked off. I show unavailable after 4:00 on my work calendar. So nobody can schedule anything without, talking to me first, or I just say, sorry, I'm not available. And that's largely because my wife's a teacher. So during the school year, I do help pick my daughter up after school. So I got to get to daycare to pick her up. But even like now in the summertime, it's just my opportunity to get home and then spend time with the family. So, that's generally about 5 to 8 is kind of that time. 8 o'clock's right when we start getting my daughter to bed. And then kind of 8 to bedtime, which we were talking, I would like to say I could stretch till about 10, but usually I'm getting ready for bed about 9:30 or so. So usually kind of that 8 to 9:30, like that's been my time to to do what I call the other stuff, right? So that's, real estate things, that's whatever it might be. There's some exceptions to that. So, again, like Tuesday, which was actually rescheduled for today. Like I have a call with my business partners. So we do that at 7:00. Mondays is bowling league. So, I don't have as much time because I got bowling league I got to get to, which is one of my other, hobbies that I've been trying to figure out a little bit of the balance of, again, that if you try, for me, like I did find if I get too much into like the whole fire thing and like cut everything out, it was tough. So like I had to kind of figure out, okay, what was that something I needed? And for me, it was getting back into bowling.
Finding that balance, right? Balance with all your aspects of your life.
But what I love is that you really prioritize and you intentionally delegate that, from 5 to 8 p.m. it's going to be family time. And maybe it's not every day, but, you intentionally decide that that's what you want to invest with your time at that moment, which I think is quite powerful.
Right.
Yeah,
so many times,
important to...
people come home from work and then their mind is still halfway.
Yeah, I mean, we see it in ourselves, or I see it in myself for sure.
Not fully present.
Yeah, and it's for me, it's too important too, because like every Sunday, like my wife and I go through the calendar for the week, right? So we're reviewing like, hey, what's on what days, what's on what nights, who has what, and that way, like we make sure that we're on the same page. But then it also makes sure that, again, it's kind of like, before I was doing that, like it was like this like nebulous thing. She didn't know, like, are you working? Are you not working? Like, am I allowed to bother you? Am I not allowed to bother you? Like, what's going on? Like, when are you going to be, and it was just like, it's not that she cared. It was just like in order to help, support kind of the schedule and the structure that I need, for all the things that I'm trying to accomplish. Like, it was important for us to kind of have that opportunity to get on the same page. So that's where every Sunday we go through, we make our meal plans for the week so that I go grocery shopping. We put all that together because I help do the cooking, and do that shopping because I love frugal grocery shopping. That's one of the things I learned too. Like, if I'm going to go and spend money, if I just spend it at the grocery store, then I don't spend it on other things. So that's nice.
Yeah.
And then again, we build out that plan. So it's the meal plan, and then it's just also kind of the calendar and getting aligned on what nights, what's happening.
What does that look like? Is that like 10 minutes on a Sunday morning that you do that planning?
It would be nice if it was only 10 minutes. It's probably, I guess it's hit or miss because, again, now that we've got our daughter Kira, like, it's like we get distracted. So it's like we'll be like halfway through like making a plan, and then all of a sudden it's like, wait, we never finished the dinner plan for the week. And then I'm like, wait, hold on, we got to go back and look at the calendar. And so it is a little more sporadic. I will say, like, the one thing that I do kind of leave still unstructured are my weekends. So I don't necessarily have, that same diligence yet kind of lined up on the weekends. Right. That's a little bit more free flowing for me right now. Now, again, time will tell if it stays that way or not. But that's just I definitely needed it for that Monday through Friday time slot, though.
Right.
So it sounds like you and your wife really work as a team on a lot of aspects of your life. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how your dynamic is? Is she also equally motivated as you are? Do you find that she follows your lead in that? And how does that play out in your daily life?
So I would definitely say she's more motivated than me in her professional work. So she's a teacher, absolutely loves it. If it wasn't for the fact that I could tell her how much she makes, like, she would have no idea. Like, she's not in it for the money. I mean, most people don't go into teaching for the money, but like, so like that part of it, she's just kind of like, hey, like, you enjoy doing all the finances. Like, your plan obviously makes sense. Like, we're aligned in like our values and stuff like that. So like, so she's just kind of like, hey, you enjoy this stuff. You obviously have a passion for it. So like, cool, go with it. The waking up early in the morning, not so much. My wife would sleep like 27 hours a day if we could find a way to let her.
Sounds like someone I know too.
Yes.
But again, is nonetheless supportive. So I'm fortunate, my alarm doesn't wake her up. So, she doesn't get angry at me for waking up at 3:30 in the morning. She does like to tell me that when I tell people our daughter sleeps through the night, but that's not true. Sometimes she'll wake up at like 4:30 or 5 o'clock.
Not mine.
Exactly. Because she'll sleep till like 4:30 or 5 o'clock. And I'm like, yeah, she sleeps through the night. My wife's like, no, she doesn't. She wakes up every night. And I was like, no, I'm already at work by the time she's waking up.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But no, again, so yes, super motivated with her work. I mean, she does, come home, she's working, but again, like that's where it's important. Like when we get on the same page and we plan that calendar, right? Because she'll look at what she has going on, And there are definitely, I mean, teachers they work a ton. And so like, coming home at night, there's a lot of times additional work that she has to do. But
Right.
it's kind of that trade-off of like, okay, well, what nights do you have? Things, okay, so you've got this night, this night. I need to be able to stay late at work, to get more done. Or, it's, especially around, things like, report cards or parent-teacher conferences or just, again, other milestones or whatever. There's a lot of times that she has work she has to do in the evening time. So being able to be clear on like, okay, like, well, then this night, I need you to, be on Kira duty because I need to be able to focus on, doing what I need to do for work. And so, again, being able to get on the same page on Sunday and kind of plan our weeks out, it helps her because then she knows, okay, these are the days I am where I'm not doing things. And then, on the days that she's able to then stay focused and get all the things done that she needs to. And then on the days where she's kind of got Kira duty, then I can kind of have my time to say, okay, this is my time to, step away, be able to, plug in, do whatever I need to real estate wise.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I don't think we really dug into what you're doing with real estate right now, which is a lot, I believe. Can you just share like all the companies that you are starting and developing and what your goal, dream, plan is with that?
Yeah. I mean, the big thing right now is we're starting up a property management company. So there's just a lot with regards to the system, the software, the process, the procedure, the regulation, all that different kind of stuff. So really trying to make sure we get everything set up right. So before we go and take on, any new third-party clients and stuff like that. So that's definitely, the big, we'll call it time sink right now. Then just building out, the investment side of the portfolio. So there's, just kind of a lot to dig into there. It was a little bit of a challenging year with the number of evictions we had, the amount of renovations we had to do, and the financial impact on that. So definitely a lot of time, on the phone with my partner, talking through kind of, hey, what's going on, what's priority, things along those lines. So we're hoping we kind of get past that. But then, yeah, again, as we've kind of stepped into this space, I really do see a significant opportunity for, I want to call those additional, real estate services. And so, my mind's kind of that crazy, running through all of the different, okay, this is where things are going to go. This is the next business. So like, even though I'm focused on this one, I'm already kind of in my head planning, for some of those next things. And, yeah, so my one business partner is always kind of the one that it has to kind of rein me in and be like, okay, like let's figure out what we need to do this week before you start planning for 5 years from now.
Right.
So.
And how is that relationship? Because I know a lot of people, on this podcast are kind of more entrepreneurial or interested in starting a business venture, maybe not even real estate. But how is dealing with a partner and having that partner to kind of bounce ideas off of and just go through all these ventures with? Right, you kind of co-own like 15 units at this point. Is that?
Yep, exactly. So we've got a couple of different, so like my wife's my business partner on some of the rental properties. And then I've got this other business partner, that I have on the other ones. And I think it's very important to, there's a lot of ways that we're similar and that we're alike, in that we're both very analytical, we're both very focused, and things along those lines. But I definitely have a lot more of that, I want to call like, the dreamer kind of mindset and things along those lines, where he's a lot more, practical, day to day, down to the numbers, and that kind of stuff. And so, it's really important for us to kind of have that balance and that check of like, okay, like, does this make sense? And it was actually interesting. So he was actually in town this past weekend for like our annual, strategic planning, year review, goal setting, kind of meeting that we do every year.
Is he local to you or not really?
No, so he actually just moved from Cambridge, Massachusetts, back down to Arlington, Virginia. So
Okay.
He lives in Arlington.
Okay.
And so he was in town, and we were kind of talking through like what we wanted. And it was funny because like earlier, like at the last fall, winter time, we were under contract to buy like 5 properties, and I was like super excited. We had a flip going on, and all this kind of stuff, and like he was kind of stressing out a little bit, and like. Now he was kind of like, yeah, I'm starting to feel really good about, the progress that we've made the last couple of months, kind of stabilizing things. And I was like, really? Because like I'm getting kind of nervous because like things are taking longer. And it was just interesting how like we were kind of like balancing each other out of like when I wanted to go, he was kind of saying like, hang on, maybe we need to look at things a little bit. And then like I don't want to say like I'm saying no, because I definitely defer to him because again he kind of runs all of our financials, and so at the end of the day I'm like, hey, if you're comfortable, like I'm going to trust you and rely on you on that. And so like, if you tell me we're good, like I'll stomp on the pedal and I'll go trying to buy stuff, we kind of said that we got agreed, we're a little more opportunistic right now. I mean, I don't know how, Darren shared at the meetup, like, the market's kind of pretty hot still right now. Supply is low, and down in our market in Wilmington, we're definitely, seeing that. And so people are what we think are overpaying. So we're not seeing as many deals as we saw even, a year ago, right? Like it's
Yeah.
getting very tough to find deals. And I'm talking, we've never really gotten any of our deals off of the MLS. A lot of our deals have come off market. And it's just like, even from an off market perspective, what sellers are asking for, they're inflating those numbers just because they know the market's up. And it's just not meeting our criteria. So it's definitely been challenging and a slowdown, which we'd utilize private investors. So that's been a little bit of a pain point for them too, because like we're not redeploying their capital. So they're having to, find other people, in other places, not necessarily other people, but, just any other avenue. But they're kind of hesitant about the market, right now, because the market's up. Some people think it's going to keep going up. Other people feel like we're, hitting the max of that 10-year bull run. And so, it's definitely an interesting kind of conversation to be like, I agree and I wish I could, but I also can't make a bad investment. And they understand that.
Yeah.
But then they're left kind of going, well, I don't know what else to do with my money. So,
Well, that's a cool glimpse into like your business and everything you're generating.
So when I'm hearing all of this, my head is whirling, and I feel like if I was trying to juggle all of that
With a full-time job.
with a full-time job and a family at home, I would feel really stretched thin. How do you find time to kind of slow yourself down and pace yourself through all of this?
Or are you just okay with that high intensity lifestyle?
yeah, I was going to say, why would you want to do that?
I'm kind of similar to you. Like suddenly when we have so many things going on, meetups, podcasts, renovations, rehabs, and then, just family vacations, it's just like, we got to slow down. I'm like, oh, I'm okay with this. Let's keep going.
Yeah.
I feel like I bring the sanity into the relationship, because if he didn't have me, I don't think he'd eat or sleep or really do any of the necessities. You just keep plugging away at the next thing.
So what do you have to say there, James?
No, it's definitely it's interesting, because I was actually talking with one of my coworkers, I think today, about it. But like I rolled over a week of vacation from last year because so again, like we didn't know coming into the new year, with our daughter, what that was going to be involved and stuff like that. So I wanted to have the extra time, especially in the beginning of the year, that, if she got sick, if whatever happened, like I had time available. So it turned out she's been great, knock on wood, haven't had any crazy issues, and so like, not only have I been accumulating time off this year, but I haven't even used up my rollover week yet, because I've only taken 4 days off so far this year, right? So, for me, that recharge time, it's like, I need like a day to like get caught up on stuff, right? Or it's, I jokingly say, like I slept until 4:15. Like, I came home from work yesterday, I was exhausted. I took a 45-minute nap, and then like I was good. Or like on the weekend, maybe it's an hour nap or something like that. And like that's the extent to which, like I need a recharge. Like, I get antsy, and not that I don't enjoy, right, like a week-long vacation or something like that, but like if I go and I take a week off, like, again, it's quote unquote sit back, put my feet up, relaxing for like a day or two, and then I'm like starting to stress out, or like, okay, what are we gonna go do? Like, why? I'm being unproductive. Like,
that sounds
this isn't cool,
too.
right? And so, obviously, it's still good. It's still something that needs to be done. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely interesting and different from, again, that kind of like normal mindset of people where like they need that vacation to get away from the world and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, when you don't hate the world that you're in, like vacations become a lot less interesting.
What you're doing is life-giving, not life.
Yeah, exactly. That's a big thing too. Like it's so crazy. We've had some challenging stuff happen at my employer, and there's some people that maybe aren't in the most positive of mindsets. And it's so frustrating to like see everybody like walking around with their heads down and hunched over. And like I'm walking around, I was like telling people, I was like, why do you do this to yourself? I'm like, what are you talking about? I was like, when you wake up in the morning, like, are you excited to come to work? And they're like, no. I'm like, why not? I was like, even if you have to lie to yourself, like when you get out of bed, tell yourself it's going to be an awesome day, right? And this is gonna be and because if you start off talking about how bad the day is going to suck, like you've already pulled yourself down. And what is going to happen in the day that's going to make your day become awesome? Like what bar are you setting to get to that? Versus if you start your day really, really high and then things kind of start to happen, you're going to end the day and you're going to be like, today wasn't so bad. Maybe it's not an amazing, awesome day, but you're going to be like, it wasn't so bad. Versus if you start the day terrible, it's going to be so hard to go up from there. And I feel like I remember reading like an actual study somewhere where like people actually like they tested this, and like because of the again the whatever the hormones are that your brains put out that make you happy and stuff like that, like when you tell yourself you're going to be happy and you can like fake it, like your body actually doesn't know that you're faking it, and it will still release those chemicals so that you legitimately are more happy. And so like it starts with just that mind shift change of like taking whatever circumstances that you have in your life and just like you control how you react and you respond to those things, like no matter how good or bad they are. And so like for me, that's like one of the biggest things is like if you just constantly are looking forward to Friday. I said this to our president had been traveling for a while, and he came back from the office on a Friday, and he was like, "Happy Friday." And I walk in his office, I was like, why is it that everybody wants to say Happy Friday? Nobody ever comes in and says Happy Monday in his office. And he was like, you know what? You are absolutely right. I happened to see him on the past Monday, and he was like, Happy Monday, James. I was like, Happy Monday indeed. Because it's
I van pool with
crazy.
4 other guys to work every morning, and always like Monday, it's like the one guy is always like, yeah, we got 4 more days, 3 more days, 2 more days. Oh yes, we're here every morning.
I just don't get that, like it's like, I'm not saying that, it's not like life's not always going to be all great and stuff like that, and like things happen, right? And don't get me wrong, like there's days where I'm like, oh my God, like how many more hours until I get to go home, right? But like you can't let that be your normal. Like that's such a like it feels so depressing to me. Like
It
everybody's
is.
always like, oh, you're always so happy. Why? It's like because I want to be.
Right. And how much do you think, like, you living your dream, but also maybe some level of financial independence where maybe you don't actually need this job, if you were to get fired or quit, you'd have this other venture to put all your time into. How much do you think that has to play into it?
It's absolutely huge. I absolutely can tell you that, right? So
I would agree 100%.
You had kind of mentioned a little bit before, but so before this job, I'd worked for Amazon, and they're an absolutely amazing company. I love a lot of what they do. They get a lot of bad press for a lot of reasons and stuff like that. But I was one of those people, right? Like everything in my life always kind of came natural to me, right? I was a natural athlete. I was naturally, smart, so like I didn't have to study that great to get okay grades. Like, I could play any sport okay. I was never an all-star at anything, but like things were just easy, so to speak, right? And so then when I started working, right, I mean, I had a liberal arts job and I got into this supply chain field. So I was working for an IT company. So I was learning like the program. I was learning how to run manufacturing sites. Like I had no idea what any of this stuff was, but I was able to teach myself because I just had that natural ability to learn or whatever, right? And then I get to Amazon and I think I'm rocking it out at my first assignment. It's my first people management job. And I get sat down by my boss and I get put on write-up, right? And it's like the first time in my life somebody was telling me that like, hey, you're not good at this. And I was like, and I'm like, my job's at risk. And I'm sitting there going like, I got a mortgage, I got a family, and I was stressed out beyond belief for like 6 weeks. I mean, like I didn't sleep, like as much as I don't sleep now because I don't want to, like that was the first time in my life I didn't sleep because like I couldn't. And that was really one of the biggest things that clicked for me. That was like, this is not okay to like have this thing hanging over my head and not have. Yeah, and so that's when I got really serious about looking at, my expenses and what were the things I was putting in my life in order to minimize my cash outlays, and then really start looking at investing. And am I 100%, to a point, where again I'm financially independent? Absolutely not, right? Like I could not stop working, but I'm absolutely at a point where I've controlled things. I've got enough good stuff going on that I could take, a serious pay cut. Like I could go get a job and like be okay. Right. And, that wasn't necessarily the case, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, when I kind of, or how long ago it was, I think it was like 5 years ago, like when that kind of first happened. But that was like my wake up and kind of aha. And when I really started like chasing, that FIRE concept and trying to figure out what that looked like. And so for people who go through their entire life living paycheck to paycheck or in fear of, I need this job, absolutely, like there's that. But again, like you can decide that you're going to live that way, or you can decide to do something about it, right? And so, that's the people that like, oh, hey, I got a pay raise and I'm going to go spend the money or whatever. I mean, like, I don't think I've spent more money like since I, bought this house and got married, 8 years ago, right? Like, and I've been fortunate that I have gotten increases along the way. And so it's been, again, like, how do I just redeploy that without lifestyle inflation?
Right. And I think a lot of time it's just like kind of the boredom, like, oh, I'm bored. Let me just try to make something interesting in my life. Let me buy this. Let me buy that. But, you and me, maybe we have like other ventures where like, oh, we need to invest time here. Or even for me, sometimes I do buy things, but it's for my real estate properties. And I feel like doing those buys is enough for me to get rid of any material things I need for myself.
Or your really awesome LED lights for your podcast.
Right. My $10 LED lights that I got on Black Friday.
Yeah.
To make a sparkle on the podcast.
So one thing I'm definitely getting out of this is just the shift from, this kind of almost like vulnerable victim mentality into an empowerment mentality, where you really take the reins, and you yourself have done this and are showing a great example of taking the reins, taking charge of your life, and strategically positioning yourself where now your work is something you truly are passionate about and you do as a choice, and some obligation, but mainly a choice because you've decided, I like what I do and I'm going to continue doing it for that reason.
And it's really interesting. I forget, there was a book that I was reading. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm really bad at cutting people off. But there was a book that I read, and I can't for the life of me right now remember which one it was. But it talked about like finding your passion in work. Right. And most people don't start with a passion in work. The people who are passionate are the people who like had been working in it for like 20 and 30 years. Right. And it was like they discovered the passion for the work that they had. Right. And so again, like I have a liberal arts degree. Like I didn't know what supply chain was. Like it was like, oh, hey, look, it's 2008. There's no jobs. This place is going to pay me. Cool. I'm going to go work for them. Like I wasn't excited about going there. Right. I was excited about like, hey, like I'm a grown up now. I have a paycheck. I have bills to pay. Like, right. And stuff like, well, maybe not about the paying bills part, but it's like that's what I was excited about then. Right. But like, when I figured out like what is it that I love about supply chain, right? So at the end of the day, what it is, it's all about problem solving, right? And so like that's what I love about it. At the end of the day, like I don't necessarily care that it's supply chain, to be completely honest, right? But like everything that I do all day long, no matter what part of supply chain I'm in, I've been in warehouse operations, I've been in IT, I've been in planning and logistics, I've been in procurement, I've been in all of that. It's all about problem solving and like putting a puzzle together, right? And so like that's the part that excites me and that I have fun with is what's like that next puzzle piece, right? So like when you can find what is it about what you're doing that you can get excited about, right? Like you can develop that passion for your job. It's not something that you necessarily like, people are like, oh yeah, follow your passion. So many people like they don't have a passion like to follow. You have to find it and you have to develop it.
I like that.
And that's really hard for people to wrap their mind around. It was something I did, and I can't remember for the life of me what book it was in where they talked about that study that they did, but it was really interesting and eye-opening to read that.
If you remembered at some point, let us know. We'll put it in the notes.
Yeah. So I kind of just wanted to touch on, because also for me, and I've never talked about this on the podcast, but like how powerful, financial independence, like you said, you like what you do, you see yourself continuing to work, but how much empowerment you get from that financial independence. And for us too, we're 89% financially independent at this point, and just the amount of confidence it gives me and how I relate to my coworkers and my supervisors because of it. I feel like I have such a casual relationship with my supervisor. Like this yesterday, I asked my supervisor, hey, let's play badminton on Thursday. I challenging you and the lieutenant colonel to a game, and I feel like none of my coworkers would do anything like that. On Tuesday I went to play volleyball at lunch and went for a run back, and and our workplace actually, I work with 6,000 other engineers in a military installation. But our building gives us 59 minutes or an hour every two days a week to kind of do our physical activity. And no one seems to take advantage of it. But, I come into work, sweating after a nice lunchtime run and just working at my desk. And then we have, luckily, a shower in my building, too. So then I take a shower.
I was going to say, I hope so for your coworkers.
Right. But no one takes advantage of it. But me, I'm like, hey, I want to, maximize my time. I'm here at work anyway. Let me not take away time from my family and go for a run. Let me go for a run at lunchtime and really maximize what I can do. Playing volleyball, today I was at Toastmasters at lunch because we also have a Toastmasters chapter. And so I'm just really trying to make the most. And that's why I love my work experience. I like what I do, but I'm also incorporating and designing my work life to be what I want it to be. And I've, done that very diligently throughout, and I am able to enjoy myself.
Yeah. Very cool.
So, are there things that have inspired you, books you've read, other resources you've encountered that
you want to share with our audience here that you think might inspire them, light them up to finding and focusing on their dreams and passions?
Wow. There's so many books.
Maybe let's dig into, because you had mentioned Miracle Morning. You were kind of talking about your morning routine and savers. And how does, you mentioned you doing your waking up early and then working out and athletics. But is there any more things that go into that you can explain?
So like the Miracle Morning is a huge one. I mean, like for anybody who hasn't read it, or any of Hal Elrod's stuff, again, definitely check it out, because it's all about that intentionality, right? From an entrepreneurial perspective, the Traction by Gino Wickman is kind of the one that I had alluded to under the Entrepreneur's Operating System. So again, that's a big one. It's all about, again, having systems and process, and really, the business time that you have, being able to, dedicate that, and making sure that you have, solid understandings of roles, responsibilities, and it's all about alignment and consensus. Not consensus from a decision-making standpoint, but like if everybody's on the same page about like who's the one making the decision, then like that kind of consensus, right? And then like you just know, okay, like you can do this. So like anything like that, like for me, that's like one of the big things I'm focusing on right now is like any book that I can find. So if there's anybody who has any recommendations they want to send me for other books like that, like I would love to hear them. But again, trying to figure out, again, like how do you kind of prioritize, optimize, create that schedule, is huge. Just from an energy standpoint, I strongly recommend any of Grant Cardone's audiobooks. So I'm sure his regular books are fantastic, but he does all of his own audiobooks. And if you ever listen to Grant Cardone, like the dude's crazy, like in a good way. Like you think I have energy, he's like way at a different level. And he like ad-libs all kinds of extra stuff in the audiobooks that aren't in the actual books. And so like listening to those is like ridiculously motivating. Another really good one for anybody who's like trying to get started on this is the 10% Entrepreneur. So that's a really good one, because it talks about like, again, there's like the people who, have that full-time job and they want to start a side hustle, and then they eventually maybe transition all the way to their side hustle. But then there's the other people who realize they really love what they're doing. And so like, how do you still kind of create, again, that passive income stream, right? So that you're not entirely dependent on, and so the book kind of talks about both of those options, because it's going to fit for both types of people. So that was another really good one that, was a big influence on kind of like, how do I try to think through doing this stuff? I don't know. There's so many good books, like good podcasts. There's lots of really good podcasts. I mean, Bigger Pockets, is a great one, and they've got 3 of them out now. The Choose FI podcast is fantastic. So that's one of the like benefits of like running, is like I listen to podcasts and books, and it's like I wish if I could find more time. It was the one downside of leaving Amazon was I got a shorter commute, which means I had less time to listen to books and podcasts. So it's huge, and that's why again, like I don't spend time watching TV and stuff like that, because I'd rather just be listening to stuff. I learn so much better that way. Right,
growing your mind, gaining just working on yourself and continue to grow and develop, rather than being a mindless zombie watching video.
The interesting thing I notice when listening to audiobooks or reading a book of this nature, where it's like a self-help book or motivational book to get you where you want to go, is just how it gets the cogs turning in your mind, and all of a sudden you have these thoughts coming, and you're just planning and brainstorming and dreaming. And that's big, because I feel like a lot of people find it hard to even start dreaming. Yeah. And I think one of the best ways to start dreaming is to start listening or reading these books, because all of a sudden they start making you ask those critical questions that you didn't even know you should be asking, because you didn't know. You didn't know where to start. And here it's like a blueprint of other people who've done this, what they've found has worked. and the best methods for achieving success in various areas in life. So I think that's so key to read and keep up with those things. Sonny is definitely the one who does a lot of it, and I get a lot of it through osmosis.
Yeah.
He tells me about all the exciting things he reads, and I do listen to podcasts and read things as well, but not nearly as much as he does. But I do see the power in listening and reading in order to just keep your dreams alive and keep you moving forward without becoming stagnant.
Right. I mean, the only reason I ever got into real estate was happening upon the Bigger Pockets podcast. Before that, I knew nothing of real estate investing. And just through that podcast alone, that changed the course of our lives, buying this 4-family house and, another 3-family and just starting to create this financial independence. But without stumbling on that one piece of knowledge, that one piece of content that was out there, would have had a completely different trajectory in our lives. So.
Right. So if there's any listeners out there who are thinking, oh, well, this all sounds great, but I don't have a dream.
Start reading, start developing your mind,
Exactly.
exercise that mind instead of, do something engaging, not like watching TV, something really that works your mind, reading books, listening to podcasts, listening to these new ideas. And yes, listen to some of those suggestions that James mentioned. So James, we kind of want to wrap up here, going a little long. Is there anything that we should have asked you that we didn't? Anything you want to share with the audience? Some parting words, some best advice you have?
No, I mean, I think we kind of covered it, and I think everybody would kind of get my theme. Like, if there's anybody who they are sitting on it, right? Like, get started. Don't keep waiting. Like, there's going to be no good time. There's going to be no good anything. Just do one thing different tomorrow. Just one thing, right? Like, I think that's like whether it's real estate, whatever it is, right? Like, people, when they start reading books or when they start listening to podcasts, like, the number one thing that trips them up is those people already successful, right? Nobody talks about the journey to get there, right? Nobody talks about, all the slips and the falls and the bad things that happened to get you to that level of success. Almost nobody that I know has success without some sort of setbacks, personal, financial, business, who knows what it is. It could be major, it could be minor, right? But the biggest thing is, like, don't get tripped up by being like, oh, I have to get from A to Z. No, you just have to get from A to B, right? And then from B to C. And you may not know how to get from C to D, but guess what? You'll figure it out when you get to C, and you have that perspective, right? Because you don't always know what's around the next turn. You don't always know what the next step is. But as long as you take the next step that's in front of you, you're getting one step closer, and you'll start getting the information and the knowledge and the access to people. Like, if you had asked me, when I bought my first house, if I was going to be, presenting at meetups and be on podcasts and do all that different kind of stuff, I would have thought you were crazy. Like, I never, like, that was something that the big shots and the big wigs did, right? Like, the people who knew what they were doing. I'm just little old me, right? Never in a million years, right? Like, if you had told me when I was getting my degree in liberal arts, that I was going to work for Amazon someday, I would have been like, who are you? Like, what did you hit your head on, right? Like, but when you take step by step, like, things will start to come together and things will start to happen. So, like, the number one thing, no matter what you take away, is figure out what you're going to do. What is your next step? How are you going to get started? And do it tomorrow. Don't wait.
I love that. Advice. Yeah. And you see the whole vision, but just take that one iterative step, each and every day.
Right. That's great.
And even if you don't, again, to somebody's point, like, if you don't know what your vision is yet, but what you're doing now isn't your vision, what is that one thing that you can change, right? Like, the things that people have consistently in common, those successful people, right? They read, they exercise, they meditate, they wake up early, they, give back to the community, they do all these different kinds of things. So if you know nothing else and just know that those are the things that those people have in common, go start doing those things. Because what you're going to find is you're going to start being around those people, and you're going to start talking about those things, and you're randomly going to start talking about the exercising you're doing or this that you're doing, and then somebody's going to invite you to be a part of this group, and then when you go to that group, you're now going to meet this guy who totally inspires you to do this thing or whatever it is. And so, like, even if you don't know what that's going to be yet, just knowing that there's something else that you can be doing differently to start you down that path of success is huge.
Right. Yeah. James, I want to thank you so much. I feel like you've laid down a lot of wisdom, a lot of actionable items and steps for us, great resources, and just, thanks for sharing your story and your journey with us. Where, if people want to get in touch with you and learn more about you or ask you some questions, where can people reach out to you?
Yeah, the best places to find me, if it's real estate stuff, definitely Bigger Pockets. I'm definitely on there. I am kind of less active on Instagram, but I am there. You can find me James Masotti 1313 on Instagram. LinkedIn kind of for professional stuff. I don't really I'm on Facebook, but not really a whole lot on there. Technically, I'm on Twitter. I'm out there. People can find me, can get a hold of me on just about any one of those things. But I guess that's about it.
Great.
James, thank you so much. Thanks again for showing up for the show, and great seeing you. Have a good one.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Okay, see ya.
Take care.
Later.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode with James Masotti. I love how he says everyone has the same 24 hours in a day. But what you do with that is your choice. You can spend it watching TV, looking at your phone, going through Facebook, or you can spend it pursuing your dreams, really making a difference. And I love that message that James shared with us. He shared, his kind of his dream, his purpose in life. He gave us a lot of action steps, and he said you can have that dream or some part of it, but you don't, you just need to take one step, and you might not know how to get there, but you know how to get to the next step, and then from there you can get to the next step and next step. So just think about today. What is that next step for you? What is that dream? How can you start thinking? And if you don't have that dream, he said, go put yourself out there. Go start reading some books. If you want some book recommendations, check out my famvestor.com/books. I share the 8 books that really changed my life. I give you a short description. Choose one of those books. Listen to it on Audible. Or choose one of James's recommendations. We'll have those in the show notes. So definitely check that out. He also gave suggestions of things he did. He joined a leadership organization through Kiwanis, the Key Club. And, I talked about my doing Toastmasters and the connections I make there, and just bring you out of yourself, and you can start to discover new paths that your life can start to take. He also mentions Big Brothers Little Sisters. That's a great program where you can kind of mentor someone who's having a difficult childhood and bring something really great into their lives. So many things that can really spark you and lighten someone else's life too. So definitely, just think about what your dream is and what little step this week you can take towards that dream. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Looking forward to you tuning into the next one. Share it with someone if you felt it was great. Think about who you could share it with. And thanks for tuning in. Good luck, guys. Godspeed.